football coach Heishma. Prairie View fell in a thriller to Southern this past weekend by a final score of 62-59. This week, they will host Alabama A&M at 6 p.m. Coach Northern, are you with us?
Yes, sir, I am.
Coach, if you will, talk about your game last weekend with Southern and preview Alabama A&M.
All right. And like you said, it was, some people may say an old school SWAC shootout. The last team with the ball won the ball game. I think we got off to a great start. We knocked them down, but we couldn't quite knock them out. I think that was the story of the ball game. We had a chance to make a couple plays. Last about 4 or 5 minutes of the ball game, we dropped a very easy interception, and late in the ball game in overtime, Dre fumbled the ball, and how he ended up getting that ball back amazed me. But he ended up getting it back in the very next play. They scored to win the game in double overtime. But it was a great game from a fan perspective. Unfortunately for us, we came out on the losing end. Some guys really stepped up for us. Some guys, made some very simple mistakes, but we just going to get back to the drawing board. But I was telling guys all week that I had a feeling that it was going to be that type of game for the simple fact that Southern had been struggling to run the football. And, I think some of our guys may have discounted the talent that Dre has. He reminded me of a Darnell Kennedy, the quarterback Alcorn had a few years ago. Was sort of short in stature but could really throw the ball. I mean, he made some very accurate throws. And then once Lee came in, and actually before the game, Lee walked over to me and said, "Coach, sort of congratulations on, being there with your team and all that." And he said, "Coach, once I come in the second quarter, I'm going to put on the show, Coach. I got to make it up to my coaches and to my teammates for the missteps that I've done." And, when he did come in the game, did he put on the show? But it was a great game, offensive game. Both defenses probably, both defense coordinators probably looking at themselves in the mirror trying to figure out what we could have done differently. But at the end of the day, we made 2 more mistakes than they did, turnover-wise, and we had 15 penalties for over 100 yards, and you can't win when the other team only has 5. So we got to correct those mistakes and correct them in a hurry and get ready for Alabama A&M coming to town this weekend.
Prairie View head football coach Heishma, the floor is now open for questions.
Coach, what did you? You look at Courtney Brown and you look at the numbers of half your players and the performance. What did you tell them after a tough loss like that?
You can't make the mistakes that we had. We turned the ball over twice. Unfortunately, one of our better players that ended up turning the ball over on 2 catches that he had. We had 3 or 4 personal fouls only. And, when you talk about personal fouls, it can get a little sometimes, but only one of my guys, he said he got spit on. And, it's hard for any man to take another man spitting on. So I can maybe understand if he pushed a guy or something like that after that. But other than that, those other personal fouls, 2 of them were coming when we had, actually 3 of them came when we had piles of guys on top of each other. And, when guys are getting separated, you get, maybe a guy pushing one another. And we had 2 of them where guys are getting pulled off a pile, and one of them bumps the referee where my best player, offensive lineman, is thrown out of the football game. He's thinking that it's a player from the opposing team, and he bumps the referee inadvertently. So when you have those types of things going on, you sort of understand. But, my guys gave it all. We had several guys thrown up on the sideline. And wanting to go back in the game as soon as they could. So, like I said, we gave it all from a physical standpoint. We didn't play the smartest football game that we've played so far as a Prairie View football team. But, they gave it their all. You look at the stats, Jerry Lovelock completed about 75% of his passes. Courtney Brown had over 300 yards. Jonte Abair had over 300 yards and about 3 touchdowns apiece. So those guys laid it on the line for the rest of their team, and we fought our hearts out. Our offensive line didn't give up 1 sack in over 100 plays of football. So we played very hard. We just didn't play smart, in particular in some spots on the defensive side of the ball.
Still got time for questions for Heishma Northern, head coach at Prairie View. Coach, do you feel your style of offense is giving your opponents trouble in terms of whether you huddle or not and the pace itself?
I would hope it does. I mean, that's the whole reason why we run it, because we don't get a whole lot of the real big guys, so it plays into our hands to play at an up-tempo pace, and I actually wanted to play faster than what we were able to at times. You know, I talked to the referees about, you know, had an umpire spot the ball instead of the referee, and we can play at a faster pace. It was sometimes I felt like we were slowed down because we didn't substitute, and we didn't substitute on purpose, and that means that the defensive team is supposed to keep the same players on the field and not be allowed to substitute. And there was a couple of instances I thought that we were slowed down because of who was spotting the ball or the mechanics. But you know, at the end of the day, that didn't cost us a ball game. What cost us a ball game was the 2 turnovers and the 15 penalties that we made. And you know, we're going to keep that same pace, and we're going to cause problems for some people. And I think the biggest thing that helped us, we had the ability to run the ball. I think we had over 400 yards rushing. And you don't see a whole lot of people lose a ball game when they rush for over 400 yards. So, you know, you have to take your hats off to Southern. They could have easily, when we were up, I think it was maybe 35-13 or 35-20. Had we not fumbled that ball at the beginning of the fourth quarter, it's a different ball game. You know, you can hear some of the grumbling in the stands, and you can sort of see some of the body language. But when we gave them life, we didn't knock them out. They kept playing, and the momentum got on their side, and it was almost a sort of one of those nothing we could do about it. But our guys played hard as well.
Coach, you ever been a part of a game where you have one running back over 200 yards and another one over 100, and still unfortunately suffer a loss?
I can't say that I have. You know, it was the first time for a lot of things. Like I say, you think and you look at the stats, and you know, like I say, the numbers don't lie. But in this game, I can say they definitely did. You know, we had over 100 plays on offense. We were above 50, almost 60% on third down conversions. You know, everything went right for us except, like I say, minus the turnovers. But it was a great game. Like I say, you have to take your hats off to our guys on both sides of the ball. And you have to take your hats off to Coach Odoms and his staff for, you know, making those guys keep believing and fighting. And I told our guys, I thought had we been able to break them a little bit earlier, they may have stopped. But when you keep on letting people hang around and you don't knock them out, in particular at home, those are the types of things that were going to happen if you don't put them away early. Because I figured they had been working a little bit harder from a conditioning standpoint. And sometimes when you do conditioning during the season, you may come into a ball game a little bit tired, but sometimes that motivates you to not give up, and that's what I'm thinking happened. Those guys didn't quit, and they played to the end. You could see both teams at the end of the game physically exhausted when it was all said and done.
Coach Heishma Northern from Prairie View. Coach, we appreciate your time, and we look forward to talking to you next week after your game with Alabama A&M.
Thank you.